elder at First and Franklin Street Presbyterian Church. She's a native of Philadelphia, but she has degrees in human services and a PhD, y'all. Bad woman. In sociology from Johns Hopkins University. Yeah. So I present to you all Delegate Washington.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm really humbled, and I appreciate the invitation, and also I appreciate you allowing me. This is the first day I've been able to wear just jeans, and so I just thought I'd be a little more casual. In another couple of months, I'll get back into the suits. Again, I just want to thank you. I did not know about this association. And your coordinator for this event. I do belong to the Greater Baltimore Black Chamber of Commerce, and so there are a number of organizations that I do belong to. So I will certainly add this one to that growing CV that I have. I was also pleased in hearing and reading that at one point this chapter was the largest in the country, and I absolutely respect and appreciate your efforts to rebuild that so that we can get our Maryland can become #1 again. And maybe part of it is that you've been so successful over the years. There actually are many more public administrators who identify as Black or persons of color, in the state of Maryland. There's still, a ceiling, and there's still challenges, but we are representing in much more higher levels than we have. We're not proportional to the population in these institutions, but we've definitely done better. So maybe in some ways, people might not feel that need as much, but as national events and WC bring attention to the fact that racism still exists, sexism exists, homophobia and classism still exists, and these are all things that and also certainly lately the anti-immigrant surge that is really sweeping through our country, and in fact often they target native-born African Americans and try to bring us into that anti-immigrant attitude, and I think that it's really important that we really resist any opportunities to close the door behind us, when we finally get through a little bit. So again, I want to thank you all for being here, and I appreciate it. Every time I hear my bio, I try to think who was that person who was doing all this, those things. But I've always just sort of taken a path of what could I do to educate, what could I do to help. And any path, any step that I took, I thought, well, I'll make sure that I try to learn more, sometimes get paid more, sometimes, as in the case of working at nonprofit and becoming an elected official, make less. But I feel like the contribution and the ability to serve and influence and to bring people up grows with that. So those are all decisions that you make as you pursue your career, and they're not mutually exclusive. There's absolutely people who do great public service that are well paid, and then there are people who also do great public service who are making a moderate income. But we know all that what we do is to serve the state and the people. I thought, because I kind of had a background in being a professor, and I thought this was a great opportunity since I hadn't really thought about public administration, but yet I actually find myself, I'm clearly part of that, and part of my career, has led me there. I just thought I'd want to take an opportunity to kind of throw out to some of you some of the ways that I think that government and public administration are together, and I promise it won't be a real lecture, but it truly is for you to perhaps help me think about it, and then maybe from a legislator to see kind of how at least this legislator sees the role of public administrators like yourself. If you don't mind, I'll just get started with that real quickly. And so, one of the things that occurs to me is that public administration is government. I mean, and these are some of the ways that, the ways that you administer the public interest, it certainly reflects our norms, our beliefs, and our powers and reality. And it's also the day-to-day. So it's kind of our broad values is reflected, I think, in the work of public administration, but also it's that day-to-day operation. And also you implement the public interest. I mean, that's your job. Your job is to implement the public interest, to do what is in the interests of the public. And then you're also the ones that are a part of the policy. As legislators, we certainly pass laws, but you are, or we are, a key part of actually moving forward in that. And believe me, this is all going to lead to transportation and gas tax, don't worry. And you know, and the other cool thing, and I guess why I wanted to kind of throw out theoretically, like what you do and how important, because there's such a trashing in the national discourse these days, so anti-government worker, so anti, you know, people who work in the public sector, and for at least the last 20 years, you know, that I've been in my career, there's been this sort of glorification of what the private sector has to offer, and it has resulted in downsizing in a lot of our operations, outsourcing of a lot of things that were done in-house, and I think as we're finding at the end of this 20 years that outsourcing that wasn't the panacea for decreasing costs and improving productivity that they thought it was. So I want you to, and I feel very proud, you know, of the career of public sector work. And then also, so the point is that if we could do these things, the jobs that you have on our own and as individuals, people would do them. But they need people to coordinate the activities of the state. They need people to coordinate the activities in nonprofit organizations or in local communities. And you are part of the executive function of the government. You are the hands of the government. And then in turn, you're the hands of the people. I also felt like, also I want to point out, I'm happy that I see on your minute notes that you also combined your logo and the Maryland logo. I was glad that you did that. And also, I think, oh, I'm sorry, I meant that. Previous, that, yeah. And so that, and in turn, the Maryland General Assembly is also an organization. And those of you, I'm sure you've taken organizational dynamics and organizational structure. And when you're looking at government, it's not just this monolith, there's different pieces of it. And in the piece that I'm in, there's 47 senators. And again, forgive me if you know this, but I just don't assume that everybody knows exactly how Maryland operates. So I just thought I'd just kind of throw that out there a little bit. There's 141 delegates, so I'm one of 141 delegates. And there's 18 that represent Baltimore City, and then the rest represent someplace else. So sometimes the interests of, for example, the interests of Baltimore City and Prince George's County, you know, are together, and we could work together. Often that happens when we're talking about priorities for the Black Caucus, for example, or sometimes priority for urban areas. But sometimes our allegiance of what we do might not fit as closely. Like, for example, the interest in expanding to a 6th gaming location. So there's something when we're looking to have one in Baltimore City. So sometimes, you know, some of the interests aren't the same. So you're always kind of, there's the same way that I guess that public administrators are a function of the cultural norms and beliefs of where they're situated or where they're operating or the institution they're operating within. So are we as legislators and senators. And we represent and try to define the public interest. We create policies, we set our budget priorities, and we provide enabling legislation. And also, we as a General Assembly do collectively what we hope individual and local governments can't do on their own. And again, legislation, that we are the legislative function of government. So the Maryland General Assembly has standing committees in the Senate and in the House. And the Senate subcommittees are the budget, taxation, education, executive, and finance. The ones that deal mostly with transportation and the environment are the two that are at the top, the Budget and Tax Committee and the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. Sometimes issues, particularly around business regulation, goes to the Finance Committee. And then also when it comes to setting fines and making certain things illegal, like I just passed a bill, HB 8, which made it illegal for employers to ask for their password, your personal password, and Facebook account. And that is the first piece of legislation in the entire country. So it's kind of, I'm a freshman, it's my first bill. And now it's a national model I worked with the ACLU and also Senator Ron Young on that, and it wasn't an easy. It seems like it would make a lot of sense, and you on the face would say, well, no, so you shouldn't have access to someone's private or personal email account or Facebook page. But there were employers and people that felt like they would want to do that. So there was a situation where we provided an exemption for people who work in the securities, and it was very clear that in that particular sector, it was important for them to have access to the email and personal accounts only of business accounts, not their personal email account or Facebook page, but that. And when I was talking about it, I said that, you know, it would be like having to bring your personal photo album to your interview, or having to bring your personal photo album to your job every day. No one would do that. Your face, just because it's online, doesn't mean that, you know, somehow it's free for anybody, for public. And the same thing is that you're not going to provide the key to your personal mailbox to your boss if they ask. What that, you know, one boss said, well, what if they're saying bad things about me? I mean, this person actually testified, and he said, well, you know, I should know if somebody's slandering me, etc. Well, as long as it doesn't, if it's not on their actual Facebook page, if it's not, you know, in the newspaper, you know, why should it bother you? And if it bothers you, and you hear them, just fire them, you know, or keep them from using the Facebook page at work. So again, as administrators in particular, why I bring this up and why I mention it here is that this case was challenged by the ACLU because the Maryland Corrections Department, Division of Corrections, wanted to require that someone that had been employed, who had gone on leave, and they wanted to come back, he needed to be recertified, and they wanted that to be a part of the process, and they had been doing it. So the ACLU filed, and actually the higher-ups didn't know what was going on. So sometimes people start initiating practices and things so they think it's a good idea, and meanwhile you're the one that's going to be on TV trying to explain it. So it's also probably a good idea to always make sure that the people that work under you or with you are clear, are doing things the right way. But back to transportation. So House of Delegates also has committees because actually over